Ambi, please come up. The stage is all yours. Tell us about Nawabs, Nudes, and Noodles.
I have just two quotes in the beginning and two limericks at the end. So just to set the tone, this is a quote by Marshall McLuhan, who wrote the fantastic book called Understanding Media. He was a professor at the University of Toronto. And he coined the term medium is the message. He also, for the first time, wrote about the global village. Right? He coined the term global village again. And he says this in his book, that historians and archaeologists will one day discover that the ads of our times are the richest and the most faithful daily reflections any society has ever made of its whole range of activities. Okay, so in fact, 100 years later, when they come and excavate, they'll find nothing, right? They'll find all concrete buildings, but where they will find proof of how we lived, what products we used, how we learned to do things, we'll probably get from advertising. So Marshall McLuhan said this, and in fact, Kurt Vonnegut, who's a fabulous American author, right? And he had made this nice, funny comment, what passes as culture in my head is really a bunch of commercials. Okay? So these are two very contrasting comments. One says it's great anthropology, other person says, our culture is nothing but a bunch of ads. Okay? So what is advertising's role in a changing society? Are we in the business of driving change? Are we in the business of motivating change? Are we in the business of making change? Or are we in simple business of selling products and services? So if you go back to the early 50s and 60s, this is the kind of life we used to lead. Without much ado, let's jump right in. Okay, this was India of 30, 40 years ago, the pressure cooker-centric married life in India. Okay? One of the most famous ads of that time was this ad for, in fact, I love this line so much, but my publisher and Anish said, no, this is not a good title for the book. I'm thinking of this as a title, Jo Biwi Se Kare Pyar. Okay, how many of you remember seeing this ad? Not bad, not bad. Okay, so let me play this.
आइए जनाब आइए क्या चाहिए
जी वो हाँ एक प्रेशर कुकर चाहिए
प्रेशर कुकर
So this was marriage, right? Marriage is about buying, the biggest gift or the best gift a husband could give to his wife was a pressure cooker with gasket release system. I mean, brilliant, right? I mean, can you imagine any husband in this room trying to give his wife a pressure cooker with gasket release system as a gift? He would have been chopped, put in it, and cooked, right? So if this was one type of depiction of marriage, let's look at another type. This is the Wills Made for Each Other campaign. Wills Filter cigarettes made for each other campaign. This particular ad, which is known in the ITC circles as the Polish joke book ad, this ad ran in print medium unchanged for 10 years. Same ad ran for 10 years. And at one point of time, I remember someone senior at ITC telling me, this one brand was making more profit than all their products, brands, diversification put together. Where are we today? Today we are seeing a very different depiction of married life in Indian advertising, right? And this ad made by Aggie of Taproot for Airtel, we'll see it and then I'll make a few observations. Some of you may have seen it, but it's worth seeing. It's a nice ad.
चॉइस नहीं है, तुम्हें ये करना ही पड़ेगा।
लेकिन प्रिया इतने कम टाइम में ये सब कैसे होगा?
Sorry guys, you'll have to manage it.
I thought it was a great ad because it certainly changed the entire marriage equation. But in social media, they got a beating, unfortunately. Why? Because she was depicted as a faithful wife who goes home and cooks for him. Why should she be cooking? But the fact is, I think it was bold. It was pushing the boundaries. We'll talk about pushing the boundaries later. But bold, pushing the boundaries, and nicely done. Okay. So is marriage, is married life still the same in India? How is it changing? And here are some numbers and some figures which will probably shock a lot of young men here, that in America, 49% of grocery shopping is done by the male, okay? And something like 43% do the cooking, and 39% drop kids to school, look after the. So the world is changed, and it's going to change even more rapidly, from the husband gifting pressure cooker to his wife as a wedding anniversary gift to what is this happening. So that was one, which is one little lens through which we saw, which is marriage. So let's move to another lens, and this is even more interesting, which is what I call old age. So goli kha ke jeeta hu to now holiday pe jata hu, right? So old age is, at least in advertising, old age is no longer seen as dull and boring, right? So let's go back in time and look at this this pretty nice ad, and I'll tell you a little backstory about it.
जब मैं छोटा लड़का था बड़ी शरारत करता था मेरी चोरी पकड़ी जाती जब रोशन होता बजाज.
Old age in India was associated with potions, pills, and pilgrimages. This was old age, right? This film made by Bajaj, Mukul Upadhyay, some of you will know him. In fact, he made the film and he also wrote the song, okay? So this was what it was, and he had numerous ads, Chavan Prash and Kailash Jeevan and this and that, all of them showing old people, right? And this was the old age. Is the old age depiction the same? Not anymore. So I will not show this ad, but this is a very interesting ad made by an insurance company, and where an old man is actually gifting his wife a golden ring, a diamond ring. And when the wife asks him, is umar mein hira? And the husband replies, beautiful dialogue, heere ko kya pata tera umar kya hai? Written by Piyush himself, but brilliantly done. This is, we saw pressure cooker, and now we are seeing diamonds. The old people are no longer kind of saying, we should, goli kha ke jeete hain, ye wo nahi hai. Aajkal they are saying, let's do other things. And we are seeing a lot of these dramatic changes. Our life expectancy, which was around 50 in the year 1960, is going to go to probably 70 by the year 2021 census, right? And people are going to live longer. And when they live longer, today, at least the upper middle class, the old people, seem to think that they have enough money. As a result, a whole lot of ads for insurance companies, banks, are all talking about old people going on holidays. Okay, old couples going on holidays, right? No longer kind of sitting at home and popping pills and praying, right? Now let's look at another segment which has been depicted differently in advertising. Okay, so we go to men, right? And this is a very famous Synthol Godrej brand. Okay, so macho men of India have now become men who moisturize. Okay? So 50 years ago, this was the Indian male, okay? Lifebuoy had this ad about Tandoori Rasha karta hai Lifebuoy, guy playing football, jumping around, getting dirty, okay? This was the male, okay? And of course, you had this, Charminar always satisfies, relax, I have a Charminar, legendary campaign, okay? And of course, you had Frenchy undergarment showing a man fighting, villains wearing his undergarment. This was the macho male of India as seen through the advertising lens. Is he still the same? Yes, there are still some ads which show machoism, but the game has changed. And I think today, macho men have turned soft. Okay? So Indian men have always used henna in their hair and a bit of surma, and I think now they're putting a lot more. Fair and Handsome almost changed the discourse when they launched in 2005. And I remember they test launched it in Andhra Pradesh, and they hit 100 crore turnover in the first year of launch. Okay? And from Fair and Handsome, now we have a whole gamut of brands which are aiming at the male skin. So you have moisturizers, you have face wash, you have facial cleansers, you have age-defying creams, all that aimed at men. And recently, when some of our people did market visit, we found in many middle-class homes, there are as many male cosmetics as there are female cosmetics. And if you count deos, probably more, right? So male, and there's a lovely term which I pulled out. Now, what is the definition of metrosexual male? Metrosexual male is defined as men who moisturize and dash, 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 dash. What is a dash, 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 dash? Yeah. Men who moisturize and read a lot of magazines. Right? Amazing. You know, women are supposed to read magazines, and now men are started reading magazines. Okay, so men have become no longer macho. They become highly soft, moisturized kind of characters. Now we move to a broader canvas of looking at certain other areas which the book examines. Okay, so we start with jobs, right? Job is a job is a job. And in India, country of huge amount of unemployment, job is the ultimate goal any brand can give. So we've had a product like Wheel, which was launched, and the original campaign was this husband comes home and shouts at his wife, you know, फिर मुझे नौकरी नहीं मिला. क्यों? क्यों? मेरा कमीज इतने पीले हैं. क्या कर रही हो तुम? And he takes out the shirt and throws it at her. Right? And then in advertising, we have this concept of voice of God. So voice of God is heard. पेश है नया नींबू की असरत के साथ Wheel. She looks up, says, "Wow, I found salvation." She buys Wheel. You know, she washes her husband's clothes, shirt with the Wheel, and lo and behold, husband gets a job, right? So this was Wheel, and another brand, Pond's Stream Flower Talc, has done some wonderful advertising on how the woman, because she has applied Dream Flower Talc, is able to take some tough questions, you know, in the interview. And this one I think is really phenomenal because Fair and Lovely till then was about getting married. You turn fair, you get married. And Balki and Love changed the dialogue by saying, you know, you turn fair, but to get a job, okay? And he played on a few words brilliantly because the ad actually sets the father against the daughter, with the father saying, "I wish I had a son," okay? And then the daughter is very upset. She applies Fair and Lovely, becomes fair, gets the air hostess job, and then in the end, the father asks her, "Beta, aur ek cup chai milega?" Because she takes him to a 5-star hotel. So beautifully done. So from getting all kinds of products have used jobs. So you use fairness cream, get a job. You use detergent, you get a job. You use talc, you get a job. You use deo, get a job. You get a job, do anything, you get a job. That getting a job was it. This country was about getting a job, right? Then a brand comes and kind of turns that thing around. It said people don't quit jobs, they quit their bosses. Okay, so this ad changed the narrative in the year, I think 2005 it was.
Yes, write down Hari Sadhu. H for Hitler, A for arrogant, R for rascal, I for idiot.
So this suddenly started saying that people are not just getting a job for a job. They want job satisfaction. The boss has to treat them well, etc., etc. So the narrative suddenly changed in 10 years ago. That but is that really true? But the problem is not that simple today, right? There are millions and millions of people who don't have jobs because they're underqualified for the job. And there are also probably a few million people who are constantly looking for a better job because they don't like their boss. So this is a conundrum which we are living with in this country. So let's move from jobs to something more fun, which is food, okay? So one chapter looks at food, how food habits have changed dramatically in this country, and they have not changed at all in this country. So in the book, I talk about dalda. Dalda actually goes back more than 50 years, okay, how Hindustan Lever had to promote dalda in street corners to convince people that it is as good tasting as what? ghee, right? As good tasting as ghee, and done through demonstrations. And it was the first time in India they created ads in 14 different Indian languages for 14 different types of cuisines. And I remember, spending 2 hours with Gerson Dikuna, who was in Lintas when this whole thing was done, right? And they were the first ad to go on. They did a film ad. They ran a 8-minute, film in cinema theaters to popularize dalda. So dalda was one. But then the other product, which is really alien to our country, which became popular, was biscuits. Okay, biscuits again penetrated. I'm saying packaged, branded biscuits penetrated the country because they had great taste, they had great affordability, and they had wonderful packaging. Okay, and again, a brilliant, bold advertising. I don't know how many of you have seen this, which is a biscuit brand actually promoted itself as the #1 villain's choice. Okay, so let's see this great ad and talk about it.
अब आएगा मजा Britannia Glucose D.
Brilliant advertising done by Britannia, their agency, Lintas. Okay, I think this was fantastic. It would have done much better, but I think there was a brand confusion there. Britannia Glucose D, too much, and later they got it fixed. They called it Tiger biscuits. Tiger did very well. This one unfortunately didn't do well. The brand which really became huge was Parle G. Okay, Parle G is probably the biggest selling biscuit brand in the world because of a combination of packaging, pricing, promotion. And in fact, they held their pack, 100-gram pack, was I think priced at 5 rupees. And they held it at 5 rupees for 15 years. Right? They didn't change the price. So they managed to bring cost economies and cost efficiencies to take down, to keep the margin. They operate at, I think, 3% margin or something like that. But great. And they actually made biscuits commonplace. The other brand, which has done great job, is no price for guessing, Maggi. Okay, and of course, 1/3 of my book title is dedicated to noodles, so it's easy to guess. Okay, 1982 was when Maggi was launched. In fact, Maggi's first foray was a failure. They launched soup cubes, which flopped very badly. I remember my first boss, Subhash Chakravarti, sitting in Calcutta and telling me how one of my old bosses, Narayanan, was involved with the launch of the soup cubes, didn't do well. And then Maggi came out. Maggi was a great success. They took a completely alien food product to India and made it common across the length and breadth of the country. A combination, again, of great taste, very economical pricing, and great availability, and I think wonderful advertising in a sense. Okay, it was simple advertising which said, "Bhook lagi hai mummy, bas 2 minutes." Right? So it kind of resonated with the country, became a huge brand, and of course last year it got into some controversy. I'm happy to report that they're back. They're doing very well once again. But to be fair, packaged food products are yet to gain real big traction in this country. As Santosh is here, Santosh will talk about it later, but Santosh has this theory that our food is eaten in a thali. Are willing to take things from the edges of the thali, which is papad, pickle, etc., and replace it with branded products. But the middle of the thali, they still resist. So we don't have, let's say, ready-made chapatis or ready-made stuff like that, which have not yet become big. But noodles is an exception, and it is a country like India, we waste 40,000 crores worth of food grains every year because we don't process them, we don't store them well. Now, and I read last week, there was a report about the bread manufacturers coming under trouble, and I wrote something in a paper where I said, give us this day our daily bread. Because if the government doesn't encourage packaged products, it may include some additives, may include some preservatives, but if you don't encourage packaged branded products, you're going to continue wasting 40,000 crores worth of food every year in this country. So this is, two products prove that Indian consumers are willing to accept, packaged branded products, biscuits and noodles, right? Because if you can offer a combination of taste, convenience, and price, Indian consumers will buy the product. But the government has to wake up to encourage this instead of put more and more throttles around this industry. So this is Nawabs. So we had a suiting culture. So people keep asking me, why is it that you keep saying, the suiting category was so big in our country? At one point of time, there was a shortage for everything else, but we used to actually make a lot of suitings, right? And we had all kinds of suiting ads going on. We had Nawab Pataudi, modeling for, I think this was Gwalior, along with Begum. And now I think the Chota Nawab is modeling for a suiting brand. I think Nawab Pataudi and Begum also modeled for Asian Paint. So, and then we had, of course, Vimal, which had Viv Richards and Ravi Shastri. And then we, I think, later saw the Complete Man campaign from Raymond, which kind of changed the dialogue from just macho or whatever to a man who actually gives up his office work and goes and plays with his son. Great campaign done by Nexus Equity. And of course, this is an interesting little tidbit which I was told. The first time in a Hindi movie, the hero appears in a jeans right through the film was Maine Pyar Kiya with Salman Khan. Okay, till then, the hero never comes in jeans. The hero comes in suits, right? So, those white safari suits of Jitendra? Right? So, this was the first time, and this was about 20 years ago. So, suitings changed, moved to jeans, okay? And let's look at the women. Women, sari again was a huge category being advertised. Okay, at one time, many agencies had 3 or 4 brands of saris, right? And of course, Garden created a new idiom in sari advertising by presenting sari as a fashion icon, right? And they had wonderful, great advertising. But saris are on their way out. At least if you look at, I've done analysis of about 200 ads featuring women across the last 40 years. One of the single thing which has happened is that in advertising today, it's very difficult to spot a woman wearing a sari. And if you spot a woman wearing a sari, she's normally the grandmother. So while saris are kind of in the decline, the Indian ethnic wear seems to have got a huge boom. Right? Manyavar became a 500 crore brand within 5 years by going after the Indian ethnic wear and shadi wear. Okay, so suddenly Indian ethnic dress is becoming big. So this whole dress area is again changing and changing very interestingly. We have music in all our movies, drama, etc., a lot of music. And therefore, no wonder we have a huge amount of types of music in Indian advertising. At one time, I did an exercise and I counted 20 different types of music which have been used, whether it is jazz, rock, Indian classical, baul music. So let's look at 2. In fact, a lot of people may think like Rahman composed the Airtel music, some composer composed the Titan music, a very old composer, right? Mozart, all of you would have heard the music, but let's see the film once. So Mozart was used to sell watches, and if you remember, Titan was launching very modern quartz watches, but they actually took a call to use music which was kind of 400 years old. Right? Think about it. I mean, that was a bold call at that point of time. So the other ad which I want to show, something.
पियो ग्लास फुल दूध 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 है वंडरफुल पी सकते हैं रोज ग्लास फुल दूध 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 दूध.
So if you look at different ads, you will see rock music, jazz, you will see Hindustani music, you will see Carnatic music. We've seen tablas being used, right, to sell which brand? Taj, right? Taj Mahal tea used tablas. So we used all kinds of music to sell different kinds of products in this country. So it's a fascinating analysis and discovery. And of course, a lot of famous filmmakers have gone from ads to movies. Satish Ray was one of the founder directors of Clarion Advertising. And of course, we have, Shyam Benegal, and of recent times, Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra, and now Nitish Tiwari, again, ex-colleague of ours, Ravi Jadhav, the hottest Marathi director, all of them cut their teeth in advertising and then moved into feature films. So in a sense, in advertising, we are worried because advertising is an old industry where we have a lot of processes and training and a lot of good talent comes in, and then it's like a leaky bucket. And then we lose the talent to TV, we lose the talent to movies. But I don't think that's a bad thing. We need to just keep filling this bucket, even more furiously. So this is an ad released by Trikaya Advertising. It appeared once in midday, and it said this: nude models wanted, figure chubby, chin double, skin peachy, hair preferably eyes brown, age 8 to 12 months. Candidates should be carried to Trikaya Advertising on Sunday, 12th September, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Address, Great Western Building. Now, this ad caused a stampede there. There were hundreds of little babies in that agency that day. Okay? And it was rated as the most effective single print ad of the decade. The most famous nude advertising this country has done, which is for Tough Shoes. They used Milind Soman, Madhu Sapre, and the Python to model for this. It became a court case. Okay, the court case ran for 20 years. Condoms. Kama Sutra changed the definition of condoms. Right? They actually sold condoms as a thing of pleasure. Right? And so we've looked at different things. Now let's move to what is the role of advertising? What is advertising supposed to do? And what is the narrative which we should have? And there's a fabulous book which was introduced to me by my friend Arvind Rajgopal, written by Irving Goffman, called Gender Advertisements. This book has catalogued probably 20 years of print advertising in the US from the 40s to the 60s. Irving Goffman was professor at University of California at Berkeley. He's seen as the most respected social scientist of his time, of this century in the US. And he talked about hyper-ritualization, that how in advertisements the ritualistic roles are played out. So the man actually looks taller and stronger. The woman looks more dainty and more kind of fair or whatever, right? And this is how ads have been done. And he coined this term, hyper-ritualization. I'm saying that as a contrast to that, there is a new metric we need to start looking at, which is neo-visualization. Okay? If there was hyper-ritualization at one point of time, today advertising has to start looking at neo-visualization. What are the new roles we can think of for people in the ads, the husband, the wife, the children, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And in a sense, this was early days. And we do, to create great advertising, you need to do a lot of social listening. You need to understand what is the dialogue which is happening in the market, whether it is in public, popular culture, print TV, cinema, okay? And in a sense, Lalita ji came out quite some years ago, but Lalita ji was the first ad where an upper middle class, obviously an upper middle class woman, was shown out in the open in the market, actually arguing with people and talking into camera. So her role had changed. She now become more articulate, more kind of confident. So the other thing we need to do, and we are trying to do in advertising, is gender roles. Should we start examining gender roles? Should we start talking about what should be the new gender roles should be? Should the child or the old people do different things? So there were some nice campaigns which come out recently called Share the Load, where the husband is learning how to use the washing machine. There's a washing machine ad, which again has the wife telling the husband, learn how to use it, okay? So advertising is tackling these, brand and the gender roles. The other thing which advertising has to do is looking at causes. Okay, can a brand take up a cause? Can a brand stand and talk in a different voice for someone who's not being recognized by society? And I thought this one, done by Fast Track, brought it out brilliantly. I don't know whether Harish Bhatt is in the room. Okay, yeah, there's Harish Bhatt. Okay, so from Tata. So this was done under his watch. Very, very bold advertising.
It might not be the right time. I might not be the right one.
So not every brand can do this, but some brands are bold enough to take a stand and actually do. And this is ran in mass media. Today you see 100 ads which are all running on digital media. 4 or 5 lakhs, you make a film, you spend 1 lakh, put it on digital media and claim that, ha ha ha, I'm a hero. No, this was done on mass media. This ran on mainline TV. And of course, can advertising act as a force of change? And I think Amitabh Bachchan's campaign on polio drops is a great example where Amitabh Bachchan used to actually convince mothers to go and give their children the polio drops. And obviously, a lot of people worked on it in many different ways, but this probably added something to the cause. If the economy has to grow at 7.5% for the next 20 years, new categories have to emerge. Brandification has to increase. What I mean by brandification is the products we buy which have a brand on it, right? Kevin Lane Keller coined this. So brandification has to increase. And brands technically help reduce inefficiencies, help reduce consumers' purchase time, helps costs in many ways, So brandification actually helps the industry, helps society. And in a sense, our advertising spend as a total part of GDP is stuck at about 0.35 to 4% for the last, 20 years. This has to go up. So I expect it to go up to about 0.8% in the next 20 years. And that's going to mean that advertising has to grow at a significantly higher pace than GDP. And we'll see new sectors to emerge. A lot of sectors today are under-advertised, under-leveraged. We can talk of healthcare, we can talk of financial services, and of course recently you've seen what? E-commerce, right? Spending huge amount of money. So new sectors are going to emerge, and they're going to make the job of communication, advertising a lot more exciting. And of course, education is going to become very, very big. So from one India, from many, many Indias, we're going to move towards one India. We made a start 2 years ago when we started looking at socioeconomic class common across both urban and rural India. Earlier, we had a different measure for rural, a different measure for urban. We moved it together. We're going to come look at the whole Indian consumer landscape through one filter. And that's going to change things. And of course, consumer culture is taking root. This has both good and bad things. I was reading a book recently where someone did an exercise, went to a high school in America, showed 10 different photographs of trees, and asked the kids, can you name the trees? They couldn't name even 2. And then he showed a picture of the alphabet, A to Z, with each alphabet pulled from a different logo. A from maybe Apple, and let's say G from Gap, and N from Nike, C from Coca-Cola. They got 50% right. That is the danger of consumer culture, that consumers stop, looking at other things, but they're basically there. Consumption itself becomes an end in itself. So you're consuming because you're consuming. Right? You go buy new clothes at a mall, and you wear those new clothes, and what do? Go and buy new clothes. Right? So from a time when we were all save, worry about the future, we've become a bit of a let's spend. And that's a bit of a worry for someone as old as me. And so what should advertising's role be in a changing society? As the society changes, should we listen to consumers? Should we keep ahead of the consumer, what the consumer is saying? Should we stay behind the consumer? These are questions which, future young people in this room will probably address. So with that, let me end with 2 limericks, which I promised. This is from Ogden Nash. I think that I shall never see a billboard lovely as a tree. Perhaps unless the billboards fall, I'll never see a tree at all. So while this is a little anti-advertising, but let's go to another one, which is quoted, I think, quoted in other advertising books as well. which is the codfish lays 10,000 eggs, the homely hen lays one, the codfish never cackles to tell you what she's done. And so we scorn the codfish while the humble hen we prize. It only goes to show you that it pays to advertise. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Just a sort of a more, kind of a conceptual question, when you set out to look at social change through the text of advertising. I mean, you could argue that on two counts, that, that's a difficult enterprise. One is a relatively easy thing to answer, perhaps, the fact that, advertising deals in aspirations, and therefore it does not, it doesn't pretend to reflect reality. And because it does not reflect reality, talking about people's sort of dreams and how much can you read about society there. But the other one, which probably is a more fundamental objection, is the fact that here's a bunch of people in a small part of a small island, and who are representing...
You refer to South Bombay?
Yeah, even earlier, a very, very tiny part of South Bombay. And having, looked at people in advertising, it's a horrifying thought that we were the people who are meant to represent, the sentiments of such a large group and diverse country. Given that advertising gets created in this way, how, is there a danger of reading too much into advertising?
Absolutely. There is that danger that, we should not over-impute, motives or over-impute stuff to something which may have been just, done as a lark, which is why in my book, I've tried to keep ads which I think had a little more social context to them. So it's not, it's not just an ad, which was effective, or an ad which won an award. A lot of award-winning ads are not there. So there is this danger of kind of over-imputing motives, like you're saying. But at the same time, I think in India we've been lucky. If you read American books on advertising, written by academics, they are anti-advertising. Okay. The ads are titled like ad nauseum and stuff like that. Okay, I think somewhere in India, I think we have liked our advertising, partly probably because we are Indian. The advertising is very Indian, and fortunately for us, we have not had this monstrosity of direct TV, hitting us, saying, "Go buy it, go buy it." So we still have a lot of charm in our Indian advertising, which probably helps that there is a subtext as well coming through, which. Yeah, what you're saying is right. A bunch of people sitting in 5 buildings in South Bombay thought of it, but it's okay. Academics also live in their own ivory towers. Advertisers and advertising agencies used to live in ivory towers. But let's not forget that there were clients who were approving it, right? The Gabbar Singh ad, can you imagine? He was the most dangerous villain. He gets killed in the end of the film, right? But someone went and approved the ad, right? So.
One of the big changes, and it's impossible, today to look at advertising without factoring in, what the changes that digital brings in. So, if you were to look at not, what is happening in terms of e-commerce advertising necessarily or in the digital space per se, but the effect of digital on the rest of advertising. Has digital changed advertising? Has the way that you connect with consumers, the way you speak to consumers, has that changed as a result of digital?
I don't think as yet, but it will change. Because I think most people in this room who are probably below the age of 30 or below the age of 25 don't read the daily newspaper, don't watch TV. Now, print and TV are still 85-90% of the advertising spend. So how are we going to reach all of you, tomorrow? So we'll have to figure out new ways of doing it. And simple thing is that you take the same TV spot and put it onto YouTube, put it onto Facebook, and hope and pray that gets seen. Take the same print ad, make it into a banner ad, put it on, on social media platform as well as news sites, and hope that it gets seen. But the good thing is interactive actually gives you an opportunity to do a lot more. Now, I'm not sure whether we have been able to fully exploit this additional, feedback which interactive offers. The other worry I have is, given in India, we have this huge power distance equation, maybe our consumers don't want interaction. They want manufacturers to tell them, ये गाड़ी अच्छी है, खरीद लो. ये कपड़ा अच्छा है, ले लो. They don't want to interact, probably, But that story will play out over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. As of now, I don't think much has changed, okay? But I think it will change.
McLuhan, whom you began by quoting, has argued that, when dominant media of the times change, fundamental change takes place in society. Yeah, yeah. And as we move from a television-driven kind of a world to a digital kind of a world, are you seeing changes in society, not just in advertising? Are we seeing, politically, you could argue that the voices that we hear today are much more strident, they're more polarized. Do you see such evidence of the fact that, the world is changing in it?
Well, Santosh, I think you do a lot of work in this area. So let me share one little anecdote, okay? I used to think that Indian social media people are rather polite. They don't write negative stuff. So about 5 years ago, our global creative director, Jonathan Harris, was here, and he was a little disturbed. So I was talking to him what happened. So he said the worldwide creative director of some large agency, I don't know whether it was DDB or Leo Burnett. No? It was DDB? I have no idea. Okay. Yeah, okay. So this big creative director in this big agency in Chicago had to let go 3 or 4 people, okay? And in America, letting go people is a polite way of saying we sacked them. So he had to sack 4 or 5 people, and they went out and they started attacking him in social media, really aggressively. And you know what he did? He jumped from his office and died. He committed suicide. So when this story came to me, I said, so Jonathan was asking me, look, this is what social media is doing to our society. People are just, becoming, attacking you. So has it started happening in India? I said, no. I think we are basically polite people and we don't do these kind of things. So, we are, all that stuff. So Jonathan said, okay, and he went away. Cut to last year. May I get a call. At that time, I think the Maggie controversy was at peak. So I got a call from various people I used to give quotes, and then I think Rediff.com did an interview about, she said, are you willing to talk about Maggie? I said, yeah, Maggie I think is a great brand. And I talked at length about how I like Maggie. I've eaten Maggie for so many years, and I don't know anyone who's gone blind or deaf or dumb or whatever eating Maggie. I mean, this whole thing is overblown, and I think Maggie is safe, okay? So I forgot about it, and 2 days later, she calls me and said, look, sir, have you seen your article? I said, no. There are 96 comments in that article. So I said, that's good, no? She says, yeah, but 95 of them are negative. They are saying that you're a corrupt guy, you've taken money from Nestle, I've taken money from Nestle, Rediff has taken money from Nestle, I'm pitching for the Nestle account, none of which was true. And so she said, shall I take down the story? I said, no, let it be. Because then I went back and she had written, headline was, Maggie is perfectly says Ambi Parameswaran. So first is, who is he? When did he become an expert? What does he know? That's started happening. I mean, I think the tipping point was about 2 to 3 years ago when Indian social media conversation moved from being fairly polite to fairly negative. And today it's a jungle out there. I mean, right now people may be tweeting and cursing you and me.
But in a world, where everything in a sense is it's encased in glass in a sense. Everything that we do is open to public scrutiny and therefore comment. How does it change things? How does it change things in the way that, do we start, for instance, a lot of the socially conscious advertising that we see today, how much of it is a reflection of change in a real sense, and how much of it is just performing for the audience that is always there?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of brands are today saying, look, if I do a film on cancer, it'll get shared in social media and I'll score some brownie points. I'm killing cows, or I'm killing trees, or I'm polluting the river, but I've done this great film on cancer, so I'm going to get brownie points. I don't think it's going to be that simple. I don't think it's going to happen that way. But I hope and pray that this entire shift we are seeing in advertising, we saw some ads here, is towards being more conscious, the whole concept of conscious capitalism. Should we start looking at conscious advertising? And so advertising has to sell. I think the primary job of advertising is to sell. You have to sell your product, sell your brand, right? But if you can do that in a slightly more conscious way, I think it'll help. In my own way, I think what Fair and Lovely did at that time, and can you imagine that Fair and Lovely ad today would have got trolled, right? But that time it was great. It put the father who virtually tells, "Kash mere beta hota." I mean, you know, and then later she, you know, and then, but today you're saying no, fairness creams are all bad, blah 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 blah, and then, you know, huge debate around that. So I think, I don't know. I only hope brands kind of wake up and they do this not just for effect or to score some social media brownie points, and that they actually mean it. Which means brands have to pick up a cause. Like Tata Tea is a great example. Again, talking about you know, Harish here, they took up something and they stayed with that something. You know, that Tata Tea stands for standing up, for waking up. You know, not just getting up, waking up and doing things. And it fitted well with the brand, which was about tea. It's about rejuvenation, right? So if brands start doing that, you know, and I think Dove is doing it now about, you know, age. So brands start doing that, I'm sure. But I think finally, what I think social media helps us do, and which we didn't have the benefit when, you know, we were, you know, actively involved in advertising, is today you can listen to consumer conversations. You know, so the smart companies have set up what you call social media listening posts, where they're constantly monitoring, listening to the social media conversations. And that's going to be, that's free research, right? I mean, you don't need to pay a market research agency to listen to consumers anymore. You just need to set up your own social media listening post, and you can constantly listen to what conversation is happening, which I think is great.
So my name is Ankit Uptani, and I work for a non-profit, Vidya, which is dealing with less privileged children. So my question is related to political and election advertising. 2 years back, I was constantly observing general election advertising. From you, I want to know that, is it really changed? How was it? Have you observed election campaign of Nehru's time? Was it even there? Of Indiraji's time, and then 2014?
You want to take this? He has dated me. He has dated me to, fortunately, Jawaharlal Nehru nahi bola. Huh?
I have no part of this.
Pandit Nehru nahi bola usne, huh? Maar diya. But I don't know whether you've read Discovery of India by Jawaharlal Nehru. You should. It's the best book on India, right? I'm not a flag-carrying, Congress party member. In fact, the people who should answer this business on political advertising are both sitting here. Sam Balsara, who handled the BJP campaign, and of course, Dorab, who observed it from his media vantage point. But I think it's a good thing, okay. Two things have happened. One is television is today penetrated, right? In the good old days, Partho is here from Bark. He will tell you out of the 280 million homes today in India, urban, rural put together, 280 million homes, probably 200 million today watch TV. 200 million have TV in their house, right? Which means probably 240 million homes have access to TV, because we have this habit of going to a neighbor's house and watching TV. Which is why today mass media is available for you to communicate, which I think, political parties in the good old days, especially if you talk of 70% rural India, it's media dark. How do you reach them? Okay, today you have mass media, you have television, you can reach them. Okay, and with mobile, again, you can reach them with, callback, mobile messages, etc., etc. So I see a positive thing in this, and I'll tell you why. I think today, if the government and the political parties have understood that advertising works for them, they will start spending money from the government's pocket on social schemes, okay? And so which you see this year, never before has the government of India actually spent money on several large schemes, which I think is needed, which I think is the positive fallout. But I think the big thing you saw was because today mass media, especially television, is everywhere. In good old days, 50% of India was media dark. You could not reach them. So you actually literally have to go there and talk to them. So I think that's, Santosh, you are a keen political observer as well, so you should.
No, I clearly, I agree that it's become, In fact, 2014 was perhaps very significant year because I think political advertising played a role that it has only sporadically played in the past. But I think the organized political campaign that at least I remember first, and I'm sure there are people who will correct me, is the Congress campaign. I think it was 1987, if I remember rightly. 87? The cockroaches and the spiders one. 89.
Janata Party we did and we never got the money. A good cause, a bad cause? Lost cause?
Okay. Any other?
My name is Yogi. I work here in the film industry, I think, yeah. Is there a reason you guys have left out radio advertising, or is it because it's just a reproduction of what we see in print and television?
Oh, I think thanks for the question. Yeah, finally when I kept writing and I hit 80,000 words, right, and I had to stop. Okay, so which is why probably radio has been missed out. There is no section. You see, actually there are no sections on different media. So radio, actually there is a nice story on radio. If you go to the chapter on music, okay, I've traced how Kelkar, who was the Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting, created Radio Ceylon. How did he create Radio Ceylon? He banned Hindi music advertising in All India Radio. Okay, so I've covered radio, I think in the music, and I've written about how later they woke up and then they allowed Hindi music, but no ads till I think much later. So there is radio. So if you're in the radio business, open that chapter. There is a bit of radio in that. But I've not tried to look at media-wise analysis. Yeah, but thanks for the question. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, this is Namrata Ganeri. I teach in a college in Mumbai. So this question is sort of carrying the larger message of this talk. How do we sort of pitch in social messages? How does it happen that we flag changes in advertising? We all know that advertising also works on a lot of stereotypes. For example, I'd like to point out that ICICI Prudential, it worked on the Sindoor stereotype, for protection and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have ads like Tanish's ads, Gauri Shinde's ads. Then we have something like Maggie, which has been playing on mother and children for such a long time. So what is it really? Is it really the creative director? Is it really I'm baffled by this thing of a range of things happening on Indian advertising, and yet certain stereotypes remain entrenched. Even today, when you sell a car, it's a man driving a car and a woman who's sitting next to her, despite the fact that we have n number of women drivers. So this is one thing that I'm just boggled by.
I think you should, Diya's there. I think you should talk to Diya about writing a book. So, I think there is no one answer to this. There are, different clients who want different things, okay, and different agencies approach the same problem very differently. So it's not as if, if you looked at what I talked about Irving Goffman talked about hyper-ritualization. You're saying about this is hyper-ritualization, which is male is always driving, woman is always sitting on the side, etc. But in India, we are seeing significant amount of what I call neo-visualization. Okay, but everyone can't do that, right? There are some people who do that, some people who don't do that. But there is I don't have an exact, answer to it. You have enough brands which use straight standard advertising, and there are enough brands which add a little layer to it, which makes it more interesting, subject to Santosh.
I guess, advertising always has, simultaneously reflects continuity and change. And therefore, there is a certain, if it is a responsibility to society in a larger sense, but its primary responsibility in the way that it operates is to the brand that it is advertising. And therefore, you will always have, I think, and increasingly with time, what has happened is that as the consumer is more open to change, advertising tends to push for change. But continuity and the fact that there are certain I mean, these are advertising, advertising is tested, advertising so it goes through a certain sort of a rigor. But eventually, if you're looking to advertising as a primary text that will change, that is primarily focused on change, you're looking in the wrong place. That is not its primary function. And so therefore, it is, in that sense, it is possible to critique it because it doesn't do that. But to my mind, it cannot do that.
Yeah, social change is not the brief of advertising. I'm not going to advertise and create more second marriages or adoption of children from northeast part of India. No, that's not the job of advertising. Why will a client pay for that, right? So, thanks. Yeah.
Hi sir, my name is Kejal Rajput and I am a student. So my question is that a lot of global brands are coming to India, and if you look at their advertising is also very global in its appeal. So do you think such ads will sustain in India? So if you look at Apple's iPhone ad, they're very global, okay? So it may appeal to a section of society which is urban, well-traveled, but at the same time, if you look at other section of India where, for example, a farmer who has a purchasing power may want to purchase an iPhone, but do you think such ad will appeal to that kind of a person? And what do you think will be the scope of Indian advertising in such a scenario?
Good question, but I have a full-length seminar on this called Adopt, Adapt, Create. Most brands, which are global brands, bring the international advertising and try and run it, which I call adopt. And if it doesn't work, they do what is called adapt, which is change the model, change a little bit of the story. If that also doesn't work, they do create. Okay, so probably Apple is working well because it's working on a global sheen. But look at Nike. I mean, Satyam is here somewhere. Satyam pointed out to me that Nike cricket ad, where those guys are playing cricket on top of a bus, changed the narrative on cricket. That's not a classical Nike ad. Right? It doesn't even, doesn't show great athletes. It's somebody kind of people who are stuck in the traffic, getting onto a bus and playing cricket. So some of the global brands have realized that you need to talk the Indian language, and they're doing a great job. So Apple may not, I don't know, but as a mass, about 40 of those mobile phone ads, I can't make out which ad is what. So if you ask me to analyze them, I'm sorry, I can't analyze. There's so many brands all saying the same thing, showing teenagers laughing, dancing, and taking selfies.
My name is Akhil. I'm a management trainee here at Godrej, on my way to becoming an employee. Two parts. Firstly, I'm a proponent of humor when it comes to advertising because I think it works really well in conveying the message. So what is your view on humor, as in how has it evolved from back in the ages, and how is it being used now, and what brands has it been used for in the past? That is first part. And secondly, I think these days, like you rightly said, people have started reading too much into advertisements and what they try to convey. So while not an ad, there's one article that I read. So a bar basically used a poster outside of their establishment. There was a picture of a bottle of a wine, and the caption said, "Spit or swallow, depends on your upbringing." Now it became a huge controversy. Scoop Whoop ran an article on it, said it's sexist, it's racist, it's degrading women, it's disrespecting women, and so on and so forth. I personally did not think it did that. It was just used a simple, used humor to kind of, in a quirky manner, to promote their brand or their establishment. Now, what is your view on it? What is the future of humor like in an age where everything is looked at in such a critical manner, everything is evaluated in an instant fashion, when you put up an ad and people start posting comments on it. So what is your view on the future of humor in such an environment?
You want to take it?
I'll take it.
You take it. No?
Well,
he can answer it, no?
Well, it's obviously I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's true. I think certainly, the challenge to humor today is the fact that there is heightened sensitivity that everyone has, and there's now an outlet for it. I think what my personal feeling is that we are going through a phase where it's almost like in the earlier days what we thought in our heads. We thought all kinds of, things in our heads. When somebody was speaking, we said, oh, what a lot of shit, but in our head, right? Today, we say it out loud. not only that, it recirculates. It's the first, I think we are going through the phase where we are waking up to the fact that we have access to what people are thinking in their heads. And that has, but it's a phase. It's a phase where, for brands, for instance, it's true that they are learning to deal with criticism. It's true for writers, they're learning to deal with all kinds of criticism up front. I think feedback, because it is everywhere, is something that is currently kind of flummoxing us a bit. But my sense is that this is a phase and we'll get past it. I would be very surprised if humor were to sort of eventually, it were to not write this out. So I think it's a passing phase, this heightened sensitivity that we have right now.
Yeah, I think you need to just, good old days, we used to say people who write letters to the editor in newspaper are not the average readers of that newspaper. Right, Bachi? Right? So it's that, people who tweet and do this about your campaign may not be your average consumer. You have to listen to them, but you need not overreact.